Hi everyone, my name is Tim, and today we're going to look at a Yamaha CR2020 monster receiver. This is dating back to the probably mid to late 70s, and it's not mine. It's actually from an acquaintance who asked me to have a look at it. And looks like what we have is an issue with the power supply. So it turns on, relay doesn't trip in. There's a number of other issues with it. I think the common problem with these receivers is the power supply board, and then there's a daughter electrolytic capacitor board that it plugs into, and I guess there's issues. They've had issues in the past with these, with the interconnects between the two boards. Some heat problems. There has been a few bulletins issued on this particular receiver by Yamaha. It looks like actually one of those bulletins was applied, although albeit incorrectly. So they did replace the transistor, sorry, the what were they? Regulator transistors, which are these two bad boys right here, and with D525 transistors, which this one has been done. I popped those out earlier and checked them out. They look and measure good. The other issue is, of course, the daughter board connection and some of the capacitors aging. They don't really age all that well, I'm told. So there's probably a number of other small minor things. We'll have to measure up some of the transistors on the board here. And what I'm going to do is what I ended up doing was, instead of having to spec out each one of the capacitors in this receiver, there's a kit from a fellow in the UK that's on eBay. I bought a kit from him previously, and with my Nakamichi, I think it was the LX3s, and I thought, well, this would be an easier use of my time instead of having to go through all the speccing out each of the components one by one. Why not just buy the entire kit, and hoping that that they're all good quality components, and they are actually. I've got the kit here off screen. So the kit arrived just a few days ago, and gold Nichicons. They're really high quality capacitors, it looks like. So I'm very pleased with the audio grade caps that they supply with the kit. So they don't have much in the way of instructions. They just have a parts list, which coincides with all the electrolytics on the various boards. So what I'm going to do is start with the power supply, and because this is where I think the problem is at the current at this current point in time. We'll pull that board. We'll swap out all the caps on there and on this board, reassemble it, and hopefully get some movement on the relay switch. And then we'll tackle each of the other boards once I'm confident that the receiver is working. It's got a frayed tuning string on this, so I'm going to have to try and find a replacement string. If it's still relatively intact, but I got a feeling if the tuner fails, it's going to be because that string pops out on it. So yeah, so we're going to do a bunch of stuff to this receiver. It's probably going to be in multiple parts, like I did with my SX950, where I did a 10-part video series. And what I did was a video series on each of the main boards that comprise the receiver. Not sure I'm going to do that many with this one, given that it's really not my receiver, but I will try to do some updates and go through any of the trials and tribulations that I might encompass, and I might actually be asking for some help at some point. So I'll use Audio Karma like I usually do, ask a bunch of questions if I run into problems, and let's see if we can revive this beast. And right now it's not working. And oh yeah, there's I bought a light kit as well. All the lights have quite a few of the lights have been burnt out on this, so I spec'd out the lights, and I've got a kit lights there, so more than enough for what I need. And yeah, let's press on. I'll do hyperlapse and time-lapse photography just as I normally do, and when I run into an issue, I'll stop and then give an explanation and then carry on with time-lapse. So in this exercise, really it's just swapping out caps, so I don't really need to talk that one through much. It's just pulling them off the board, getting access to the boards, and making sure that I'm not some of these old solder joints we'll have to have a look at and resolder. Apparently with these boards, one of the big issues is the solder joints go bad with all the heat problems that emanate from some of the chipsets on the board. So yeah, let's dig right in. Thank you. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that, yeah, I did get the part. I did mention that I have a parts list here, but in order to figure out what's what in the zoo, what I'll be doing is checking this list off against the service manual, which I've got 2 copies of it printed out. One is just the whole manual, and the other one is excerpts of some of the schematics and diagrams that I like to blow up in 11 by 17. With my old eyes, I like to be able to see the drawings a little bit better. So we'll go through the parts lists for each of the boards, match them up to the caps in this baggie, and then I can tackle them, create a list. And then what I like to do is once I've started in earnest, I'll identify each of them and then go through them one by one and check them off. I'll measure the old capacitors and measure the new ones going in. And then that way I can sort of get a feel for how many bad capacitors. I expect I'll find a few because of the age of this receiver. And then I can sort of troubleshoot from there as to, you know, what other issues could crop up if I, you know, get all of the caps changed out and I don't have any luck with rejuvenating it. It might require a new relay as well. I've got one on my parts list with Mauser, so we'll see whether I need to dig in and order that capacitor, that relay if required. Some other parts too, some resistors as part of the bulletins that I mentioned previously. That was the problem with the I think the upgrade that happened on this one. They didn't have the proper parts, so they spec'd out higher resistance resistors, and so I'm going to see if I can get the correct ones, which are 33 ohm for the fusible resistors, the 33 ohm 3¼ watt versions, or whatever it says in the service manual. So I'll have those on my parts list as well, and then I'll know what to order if I need to order anything further. So thanks. All right, now I got the boards out, and what I did was I took a time out to organize all of the caps, because it was just one big bundle of caps. So I bagged them all up by the size of the caps and checked it off against my list that I received to make sure I got everything and that I wasn't missing anything, and it was all there, which is good. So now what I'm going to do is I've got a expanded printout of the power supply board that I'm going to work on next, which you can see sticking out here. I had to pull out the stands basically inside the case here in order to maneuver these things around to get access to the back for desoldering. So I've got my soldering gun flashed up here, and tons and tons of this super wick, which that's a godsend when working on these things. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to check off each of these caps, and as I do them, I'm going to write the old values, the new values, and that way I can compare how good the caps were that were in the board compared to what I'm putting in. So we shall endeavor to do that. I'm not going to do it in real time because it would just take too long. So what I'll do is I'll go back to hyperlapse and start in. Well, there you have it. I've done the main power supply board, and there are 30 capacitors to change out. Some of them are very, very small. A couple of them are a little on the large side, but yeah, it's a painstaking job, but one at a time, and take your time to make sure you get your values right and everything. The other thing I did was I decoupled this connector, which is a common failure point I hear on this board. So I took off the old solder and put on the new solder, and now it's on there nice and solid. Cleaned it out with contact cleaner just to make sure that we make a good electrical connection with the capacitor board. So in this segment, that's the next thing I'm going to tackle, is the big honking capacitor board down here. We're not going to touch the big capacitors. Those are probably still good. I don't have a way of testing them, but they rarely fail. And we'll change out all the other capacitors that are on the board. And then we'll try to button it together again and see if we got this power supply board up and running. I didn't see any total failure capacitors here. There's a lot that were way out of spec, greater than 20% value or whatever. Some of the kit actually provided, for instance, it calls for 3.3 microfarad, and they provided 2.2s, which are sort of in that range. It's all small stuff anyway, so it shouldn't matter. But all the values were equal or exceeding in the voltages, and I think we've got that cased. The only thing I'm suspect about right now is the relays. If that doesn't If that doesn't knock it out, then I'm going to have to start testing transistors. And I did test these regulators here, these two. Those were working good, and I tested a couple of other, just spot checked a few of the transistors, but then a fuse was burnt out on the power supply, so I put a new fuse in there. So hopefully we can get it back up to spec and get some voltages in the correct ranges here, and see where we can go from there. But first I'll do the other board, and I'll do a little segment after that, and then we'll see what happens. So back again, just for a quickie. This is the baggie of all the capacitors that have been changed out. As you can see, there's quite a few of them, and a lot of them are teeny tiny ones, like 10 microfarad, 63 volt, when it actually calls for 16 volt, but all they gave me was 63 volts. So it doesn't matter if you exceed the voltage rating, as long as you're not under. And yeah, I've jotted down all of the values of the old and new so I can compare. All of the new ones were just about bang on, which is what I would expect. And like I say, the old ones that I've pulled, a lot of them were very close to the expected values, but some were quite far out. So mostly in the small capacitor range. Anyway, more to follow. Well, that completes the recapping of both the main board and the electrolytic cat board, which is a daughter board to the power supply board there. One thing to note, there's a lot of brittle wires in this thing. So when you're manipulating around the boards, I had one actually come apart, just basically separated. That's just because they're old wires and they don't like to move around too much. So I reconnected those. And the other thing to note was on the electrolytic cap board, there's only 4 caps that you change on the thing, which I have on this diagram here. Quite big ones, 1000 microfarad 50 volt, 1000 microfarad 50 volt, 100 microfarad 63 volt, and 220 63 volt. And 3 of the 4 were totally out of spec. So they were only reading about half the capacitance that they're rated for. So wouldn't be surprised if that might be one of the causes for this board not behaving properly and the amp not operating correctly. So the next thing to do is to try to power it out. I'll power it up. I'll do it on a dim bulb tester just to make sure there's no shorts or anything like that first. And then if the dim bulb tester sort of passes, I will take it off and then see if we can get that relay cooking. And if not, then it could be the relay or it could be some transistors. So fingers crossed, let's see what happens. Alright, I got this thing plugged into the dim bulb tester, and that's plugged into the circuit, so I think we're ready to power it on. Just want to do one last check here to make sure there's nothing untoward. I've got the speakers off, volume control completely down, and yeah, speakers off, filters off. And I don't know, let's give it a whirl. Oh, it seems to be behaving. But no relay kicking in. So you can see it comes really bright, which is expected, and then it dims down to an idling draw. So I don't think we have any shorts in there, which is good. LEDs are on. Backlit a little bit on the dials. Okay. Well, we're going to give it a whirl with a just plugging it in and see what happens. See if we can get that relay to trip. I don't expect it will, because I thought it would trip when it was on the dim bulb. I may be wrong though. So dim down right away. Oh, and the relay tripped. And the relay tripped. That is a good sign. That is a really good sign. Okay, we're going to give it a try here and see what happens. So, speakers are off. Turning it on. Relay kicks in. Going to speaker A. I've got a tape deck plugged into it. Tuner, phono. It's got to be a tape deck monitor here. Where's the tape monitor? Tuner, tape copy. Tape 1. Look at that. Holy crap, it works. So we definitely have sound. And that was from rebuilding the two power supply boards. So there we go. Still got to do some lights and stuff, and see what we can do from there. Clean up the controls, do some testing, and we'll have to see if we want to really muck with the other boards, if it's working good. Anyway, let's stop it here and just say that the power supply board was, recap was a complete success so far.